I've never fully accepted the old adage, familiarity breeds contempt, but I have found that familiarity can have an effect in stopping you from realizing the fullness of value right in front of you. And I'll use myself as an example. I look at the way that I return home, maybe at the end of a work day or running for an errand, and here's kind of my pattern. I walk in and I call out somewhat absent-mindedly, "Hi, I'm home." I tend to do that even if it's just the cat there. And then I may give a quick kiss and go about my way. Okay, maybe not kissing if it's only the cat there. But I seem so distracted that I'm rushing off to do the next thing. And if I'm the one who's already home, I find I can be just as distracted. Someone comes in and "Oh, hey," and then I go back to the task at hand. I see some nods, so I know we all tend to fall into that same pattern. But I compare that approach to greeting others with something that happened very, very differently when I worked on the cruise ships. When we would welcome someone home, well, it had a very different effect because we called the ship home. So when someone would go off to that place they lived on land and then came back after 6 or 8 weeks, the greeting was far more enthusiastic. In fact, I would watch friends literally run and jump into each other's arms, showering the other person with hugs and kisses, and trying to catch up on the intervening 2 months in a very rapid-fire 3-minute conversation. There was a real understanding of the value of the person right in front of them. Well, at least at that moment. Because 3 or 4 months later, after we had worked together every day, as you would pass someone in the hallways, you'd do the same thing. "Hi," and keep walking. So familiarity may not breed contempt, but can cause us to miss the real value in front of us. And the same thing can happen with Scripture. You know, this reading that we have today with the 10 lepers is a reading that I know any active Catholic has heard many, many times. We hear it in religious formation classes. I imagine in your RCIA process you may hear this once or twice at least. And you hear it in homilies time and time again as the cycle repeats. And we all know the message. Okay, 10 were cleaned, 9 went about their merry way, only 1 went back and thanked Jesus. So make sure you thank Jesus, okay? But I knew there had to be more to the message. I had become too familiar with this reading. And so this week, despite that little distraction of Matthew that rolled through, I found that I had to take the time and really focus on the reading in front of me the same way that I might focus on a friend that I hadn't seen for a couple months on the cruise ship. And there were a couple of aha moments that I'd like to share this morning. And the first is to ask ourselves the question, what it was about this one individual that caused him to, as Scripture tells us, realize that he was healed. Is there something different about him that opened his eyes? And secondly, once he is healed and once you and I are healed, what are we called to do? Now let's start with the basics. Every one of us is in need of healing. Okay, maybe not the littlest among us right now, but for most of the other 700 of us, there's something we want healed in our lives. Perhaps it's physical. Perhaps we suffer from an illness or an injury, especially a chronic one, where we just turn to God and we say, "God, have pity on me. Please heal this." But maybe it's more than physical. Maybe there's emotional or spiritual healing we need as well. Perhaps we have a broken relationship, either with a family member or a friend. Perhaps we're depressed. Perhaps we have a low sense of self-esteem or even self-loathing. Maybe there's an addiction active in our life, which has both a physical and emotional consequence. Maybe we simply feel distant from God, and we cry out, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." For I would guess almost everyone here, we are dealing with at least one form of healing that we would like to have filled in our life. So just like the lepers in today's gospel reading, we call out to Jesus. But we realize, even if it is simply a physical ailment, there's a second factor involved in what we're suffering. And that is, we are feeling separated. If we're sick, we're feeling separated from those who are healthy. If it's a broken relationship, we're feeling separated from those who we had that relationship. We may feel separate from ourselves. We may feel separate from God. And that is a key to what the lepers were feeling as well, too, because it's not like they just suffered from a bad skin condition. They were in violation of the purity laws in the Jewish community. And what did that mean? That meant that all of their relationships were severed. They couldn't live in their home with their family. They couldn't see their friends. They were truly outcast on the edges of society. They had to call out and warn people to stay away from them. And that's the same sort of healing that you and I seek as well, too. So these are the 10 men that come to Jesus today. And what happens? When he presents themselves in front of him, does he say immediately, your faith has saved you, you're healed, stand up and walk? He does that in a lot of healing stories in the gospel, right? He tells people right at that moment. But that's not what happens in this reading. He tells them to go present themselves to the priests. And Scripture tells us that it's only then they are healed on the way, after they've left Jesus. So what causes only one of them to realize that the healing has occurred? What is the barrier each one of those are facing? And we don't know. There's no statement in the parable story to tell us. But let's consider a couple things. First of all, what direction were these 10 people heading? You would say, well, of course, Deacon Dave, don't you read the gospel? It says they were sent to go present themselves to the priests. Well, where are the priests? The priests are in the temple in Jerusalem, right? Well, for 9 of them, yes. You see, the Samaritans did not worship at the temple in Jerusalem. So was he going along with them, uncertain of why he was even doing it? Or was he taking a detour to Mount Gerizim and off on his own? And maybe there was something else going too, because this process where they're told, go show yourself to the priest, is a very Jewish cultural norm. So maybe the other 9 simply expected they were going to be healed. We got this one nailed. Jesus said, go to the priest. I know I'm going to be cleansed. But I don't think the Samaritan had that assurance. You see, the Samaritan, even before he contracted leprosy, was already an outcast. He was already separated from society. He could not present himself at the temple in Jerusalem. He was already on the outside looking in. So for him, who didn't expect perhaps to be healed, that healing was a true revelation and a gift. And I believe that's why his eyes were open. That which was not expected was granted him. Now, you and I may be praying for healing all the time, and we may get a little frustrated with God. I know I did. We may say, God, why haven't you healed this condition, this relationship, whatever it is in our life? But I'm not sure that's true. Because maybe the type of healing we're looking for is putting our blinders on so we can't realize where God has already blessed us with healing in our lives. And I'd like to give you 2 examples from my own family that may help us realize that healing can take on a different aspect. The first is my teenage second cousin, Evan. Now, Evan is a great guy with an indomitable spirit. But Evan is in a body that doesn't keep up with that spirit. Evan was born with a genetic disorder that has caused many crippling effects on his body and disfigurement of his face. Now, we all might have prayed when he was young that he would be miraculously healed. I think he has, but his body hasn't changed. And you see that when you get to know Evan. He has a quick wit and a sharp mind. He is an avid sports fan who competes in every Special Olympics competition known to man. And he is a San Francisco sports junkie. In fact, most of the time that he messages or Facebooks me, it's all about the Niners or the Giants or the Warriors. Evan has not been healed physically, but you can tell he's been healed emotionally and spiritually just by looking at his Instagram handle, which says, "Not just a pretty face." Evan's been healed, not in the way perhaps that others would have expected. The other story I'll share is about my sister Louise. Louise, my sister, was a daughter of charity who served in some of the poorest and roughest communities in the United States as a teacher. At the age of 53, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she died about 20 months later. Early on, of course, Louise and all of the family prayed for physical healing. In fact, her Daughters of Charity community were praying to one particular member of their order that they were moving forward for canonization. They thought, here's your miracle, go for it. But that didn't happen. And when my sister realized that that healing physically was not going to happen, here's what her prayer became. Father, heal me in my heart and in my soul, so that my death can give glory to you. Not only do I know that Louise was healed, but I know she healed so many of the others of us who met with her and spent time with her in those last couple of months. This is the good news of today's gospel reading, that God's mercy and love in healing is present for every one of us. We just have to open our eyes to realize it. And once we do, what are we called to next? Well, certainly we are called to give thanks and praise to God for the gift of healing in our lives. But like Nathan in today's first reading, the general from Syria, I think we're called to do more. Nathan carried the earth from the place that he was healing back to his homeland. What you and I are called to do is carry the mercy and healing that we have received to the rest of the world. You and I are called to find the lepers in society, to find the outcasts, and bring that gift of mercy and love. To the immigrant in our midst and the migrant at our door. To the person in the foreign country who suffers from genocide or war or natural disaster. To the poor in our communities, without homes, without food, without money, without health care. And we are called especially to show God's love and mercy and offer it to those who feel estranged from our Catholic faith. For those who may have had abortions and feel they are no longer worthy to seek God's love. For Catholics who have been divorced and remarried, to invite them back to try to help them heal. To those who feel they cannot even walk through the doors of the church because of their sexual identity. God's love and mercy is extended to all of them. Those are the lepers. Those are the outcasts. So, my friends, as we celebrate both the comfort and the challenge of today's gospel reading, in this year of mercy, you and I have a mission. And our first mission, just like those crew members who see their friend for the first time in the last couple of months, is to run and leap into the arms of mercy that our Father has opened for us. And then we are to turn and open those same arms of mercy to the outcasts in the world today.